You're listening to Seattle Real Estate Podcast.
So a federal judge in Texas just late last week, they blocked the Biden administration's vaccine mandate for federal workers. So recently we had the whole 100 employees and over at companies of that size that got blown out of the water. We did have the healthcare workers, those who are in companies that worked with Medicare, they got funding by Medicare and Medicaid. That one was allowed to move forward, but this federal judge in Texas blocking the Biden vaccine mandate for federal workers, just these vaccine mandates are just troublesome, right? Because they're just getting blocked, and then somebody appeals it, and it's like, are we really still doing this? Have the Omicron numbers not kind of revealed themselves to be such that we don't need these vaccines and mandates anymore? Because as far as I understand, the vaccines, they're not even really set up for the most recent variant, but you know, if you get it, you'll be less sick. I don't know about that from a personal experience standpoint, but it just seems like we're going down these roads, and we're going to finish off these vaccine mandates. I'm going to keep talking about them to the bitter end because this stuff is really annoying. So let's get into it. Let's jump into it. I haven't recorded for a few days here. Last week, I had an appraisal license that was expired because I'm not really doing appraisals. And then the MLS decided, hey, you're the owner of Reynolds & Klein Appraisal. We need you to have a valid license. So I had to take a couple of days off and not record podcasts. And so a bunch of news went by. That whole Biden speech thing happened. Did you guys get through the Biden speech? I was able to watch the Biden speech, but then the questions afterwards, oh my gosh, that was like 2 hours long. I was like skimming through. I'm like, oh, this is really boring. Plus, the whole Biden speech just made me cringe. It was just like, what are you talking about? And then some of the, and I'm sure you've heard this on many other channels that weren't doing continuing education, how he was, talking about Russia invading Ukraine and just a bunch of other stuff. And so there was all this cleanup last week by not only the White House spokesperson, but, a bunch of people in Congress. Oh, that's not really what he meant. What he meant was this. And I'm kind of watching going, I don't really know. So why are so many people having to clean up concepts that the president said, in a national news conference? The first national news conference since last November. Interesting, right? All right. So we still got these vaccine mandates going on. Let's take a little look at that and see what that looks like. Federal judge in Texas on Friday blocked President Biden's mandate for federal workers to be vaccinated against COVID-19 and the latest blow to the White House's vaccination efforts. It does feel like that, doesn't it? It feels like we're just going to throw out a vax mandate. We're going to cast that net as far wide as we can. We're going to see who we can reel in. And, we're going to win some, we're going to lose some, and can't get too worked up about it. Feels like that's the approach. It feels like we're getting to the end of this stuff. And so then I turn on the news, and then this morning I was watching, 50,000 people in Washington, D.C. protesting against the vaccine mandates. 50,000, that's a big, big group. It's always interesting to see the signs that they have, because a lot of the signs, they make sense to me. And yet some of the signs you're like, I don't know. That's a little extreme. But those are the people that, there's a lot of people that feel they shouldn't be mandated to get a vaccine, something you put in your body in order to have employment. So, federal workers here, I think this is a really interesting one. Judge Jeffrey Brown, who was appointed by former President Trump, wrote that the order exceeded the president's authority. What? Hey now, how'd that happen? The case is about whether the president can, with the stroke of a pen and without the input of Congress, require millions of federal employees to undergo a medical procedure as a condition of their employment, Brown wrote. Yeah. And I really strongly feel like these mandates, they are a try-for. They're a try-for. And I had this conversation late last week with one of I consider a friend, the gal that cuts my hair. She's been cutting my hair since, I don't know, maybe 12 or 15 years since she started cutting hair here in the U.S. She's from Romania, Bellevue, international city. And we were talking about her needing to have, if she's vaxxed or if she's not vaxxed, and I'm not going to reveal that, but because confidentiality, it's important here. But with the healthcare workers, not healthcare, but hair or, beauty or any of that, there hasn't been a solid mandate for that, which I thought was interesting. Other than, hey, employees in a company over 100, she would have fallen into that category. But so far, she hasn't been absolutely required to do so. And so we kind of talked that through, and we've got all of these mandates. And I think a lot of people knee jerk to these mandates and run out and get vaxxed. Well, it's coming, it's going to happen. Well, not so fast, because so many of these mandates are going the opposite direction, right? And then they're going to get argued about in court, and then they're going to be reinstated. Some of them get reinstated, others don't. Are we kind of moving past this? Does it feel like we're moving past this? I know the UK and France are basically taking off their mandates. Was it France? I can't remember. Germany, I think, is still protesting. Australia, still a mess. But with the COVID numbers the way they are, just numbers spiked through the roof with this Omicron, right? To the point where nobody's even really looking at those anymore, because the numbers spiked up so bad. And yet hospitalizations and deaths, minuscule, just kind of minuscule. So we're kind of living with it. And I think we're just kind of past a lot of this. And I went out to eat this weekend here in Bellevue, and it's mandated by the state. We're in the state that's still requiring. Nobody asked for vaccine cards. Nobody asked for anything. Saw people walk in without masks on. I wear a mask. I'm a good boy, right? Wear a mask. Now, it's just, I don't want to waste my time arguing with somebody who's, getting paid XYZ an hour to just basically do their job. I don't need to, I don't need to go that hard, because I know that the minute I sit down at my table when I go out to eat, the odds of getting the Rona just diminished drastically, to the point, because where I was standing before, 6'1.5", and then now I'm sitting and I'm 4.5 feet. I don't know. I can take my mask off and no Rona. I mean, it's amazing how this all works, but whatever. So the Department of Justice immediately said it would appeal this Texas federal judge that overthrew the federal workers' vaccine mandate. The order comes after the Supreme Court earlier this month blocked. Let's just read this because it's fun. The order comes after the Supreme Court earlier this month blocked Biden's mandate that employees at businesses with 100 or more workers get vaccinated or regularly tested, while upholding the vaccination mandate for healthcare workers. It feels like so much of the gas has run out. The fuel backing these mandates, it's kind of run out, right? Even the people that I know that are running out that ran out initially to get the vaccine, you talk to them now and it's like, are you going to get the booster? And they're like, I don't know. Do you think I need it? I mean, everybody's got their own personal experience. And my experience was I held out for a long time, made the decision based on some family issues between myself and my girlfriend. We've got older folks. And it's just one of those things. If you're going into a restaurant, you need to have a vax card. You're going into a gym, 6 times a week. Do you really want to be doing stuff not on the up and up? Well, I really don't. But then I also didn't really want to get the vax. I did that. And then 8 weeks later, got the Rona. So that's how that goes, right? I'm not real happy about that, but whatever. You make your decision, you go with it. Sometimes when you've got a 50-50, you do well. Those odds work in your favor. Sometimes you just shoot yourself in the foot and you limp around for a while, right? So the federal government's power to mandate vaccination for its own employees is thought to be on stronger legal footing, though Friday's ruling underscores the ongoing nature of the dispute. Now, I mean, it really hasn't been done before on this mass magnitude. And here we are. And these things are getting shut down left and right by the court. And so much of this is just wildly politicized, isn't it? You could see by all the signs at the folks that were protesting this over this weekend. I think it was yesterday. Today is it's not November. It's January 24th, and yesterday was January 23rd, and that's where they had the 50,000 folks at the National Mall in Washington, D.C. And just to see some of the signs that are held up are really super interesting. It's like, okay, yeah, all right. So you do believe that. All right, okay. All right. I'm not quite right there with you, but I believe that you shouldn't have a mandate for your employment based on something medical. That's a hard no-go for me. But a lot of other people see it as, well, you're just protecting everybody. But this seems to be something that even though you've been vaccinated against, you can still get. One of the interesting things that somebody wrote as a comment on the YouTube channel was, I remember when, vaccinated meant you couldn't get like polio or you couldn't get smallpox. And I was like, that definition of vaccination, that does make sense. What we've got going on right now and what we're talking about here is something wildly different, right? Because you can still give it, you can still get it, you can be asymptomatic, you wouldn't know. And yet we're being told, well, this is something, regarding the unvaccinated. And it's like, really? Because, it feels like it's just kind of anybody because the most recent variant is so contagious and it's just, it's in the process of, I don't know, is it in the process of burning itself out? Kind of seems like that, doesn't it? Judge Brown pointing to the interest in maintaining the liberty of individuals to make intensely personal decisions according to their own convictions. That does make sense. That does make sense. And then the flip side is, you got to be thinking about all the other people. Well, yeah, and we are. So, all this stuff. Republicans have mounted a major legal campaign against Biden's vaccine mandates and have denounced them for infringing on people's personal choices. Yeah. So, all right, let's take, so that's that. So you got that whole federal employee mandate, but I mean, everybody's still just battling through these things. And from what I hear with a lot of folks that were like in state and county here in Washington, people that were going to leave have left. People that are still in the process of separation. It kind of just feels like that really long extended divorce, doesn't it? Where the one person, they don't really want to give up the marriage commitment and they just want to hang in there. And that's the employer who doesn't really want to give up a good employee, but they're being mandated to by higher ups within either the state or the county or local government, whatever it might be. They're just, let's just see if we can, make this work. And things have changed so wildly since, the numbers have changed. The Rona numbers have changed so much since a lot of these mandates were put in place. And just the overall general, attitude towards some of this stuff is such that I'm like, okay, but we're still going through these. Are we really? Are you really going to fire all those people? Are you really going to let all those people go? Because I know, on the county level here in King County, there's a bunch of people that are still kind of hanging on. Well, maybe we'll let you work, remotely until springtime. And then, we'll have a wait and see type period. And then there's, it seems like police officers and firefighters who they couldn't find, reasonable ways for them to have a workaround for their employment, just getting fired. That to me just seems so harsh. And so illogical when you are facing a massive, massive labor shortage. But that's kind of what we're doing, right? I mean, it's just what we're doing. Crazy stuff that's not really working out. I was watching another news thing where they were talking about the upcoming midterm elections, how those are going to look. And, the particular show I was watching was saying it's just going to be an absolute Republican blowout, which I don't think it'll be a blowout, but I think it's going to be pretty rough. I think Republicans they're going to have a strong showing because so much of the stuff that's going on right now is kind of holdout from, 2020. And a lot of those things are just kind of going by the wayside. That big increase in crime and that whole defund the police movement. Yeah, you're not hearing a lot about that anymore, are you? That politically has been kind of a hot potato and yeah, we're going to toss that over there and, we're going to try and work past that, and we're going to reimagine and rethink some other better solutions that don't indicate defund the police. You got some diehards out there still doing that, but the damage has been done from a lot of that, right? The damage has been done not only politically, but to the individual communities that have seen drastic spikes in crime. And I was talking to my youngest kid the other day. And yesterday, in fact, on the phone, I missed his call because I was doing continuing education to renew my damn appraisal license. It took me 4 days. It was horrific. Just not fun. Appraisal license, way different than broker's license, way different. You actually got to put in the time on some of this stuff. And horrible. And so I was talking to my kid, and there was all these sirens in the background, and just multiple sirens going back and forth. And it was clear that he was kind of driving, but he wasn't. So he had me on speakerphone, and I'm like, "Where are you?" And he goes, "Downtown Seattle." I'm like, "Are you on 3rd Avenue?" There's a long pause as he's tried to figure out where he was. And he goes, "No, I'm on 4th Avenue." I'm like, "Oh, well, that makes sense." It was just this litany of ambulances and police cars. They were going somewhere, because downtown Seattle and a lot of other cities have just become these lawless zones with shootings. I don't think I'll do a podcast on it, but we literally had, because it's just so horrific, we had a unhoused individual in one of the Capitol Hill by Chopin/Chaz community. He got shot, I believe, in the upper back with a crossbow over the weekend. So, not just gun violence. We've got crossbow violence going on here. What happened to the good old, where people just used to, stab each other a couple of times, and they knew they weren't going to kill each other. And, if they did get caught, there'd be much reduced sentence, because stabbing, as opposed to shooting. But now we've got these hybrid crimes where you shoot somebody with a crossbow and that pretty much nothing is going to happen to you because it's Seattle, and that's kind of what we're doing. One of my next podcasts will be the fact that Seattle police are no longer going to be pulling people over for expired tabs or some of the other, smaller crimes like that. And because they are somehow, they're racist. And we don't want to be pulling over the wrong people repeatedly that don't have their tabs renewed. And so we're just not going to do that anymore. And so I was thinking, okay, which of my cars don't have tabs on them? And, there's always that thought of, okay, does that trailer have tabs on it? Does that one, do those have tabs on them? Okay, we're good for, wait a minute. I'm going to Seattle. Nobody cares. I can just prance around in whatever vehicle's got, old expired tabs, and nothing's going to happen. But, police in Bellevue, they could pull you over because it's the law, and people should be getting pulled over for that. Because if people don't get pulled over and if they don't get a ticket, where's the mechanism that's going to make them do any of this stuff? If there's not repercussions for their actions, why would they get tabs? I'm just going to roll around in a car that had expired tabs like 5 years ago. No registration, no nothing. Probably registered to somebody else, but hasn't been reported stolen. It feels like that's kind of what we're going to. And this is not, a choice that the police department is making. This is being dictated from top down. And, tabs, you don't need to worry about that. You don't need to renew your license tabs. We have to do that once a year here in the state of Washington. And it's annoying, and it costs a bunch of money. We had a local guy bring all of our tabs down to $30 years and years ago, but of course has been put all these layers of bonds and all kinds of levies and things, and tabs are way more expensive than that now. But, are we just going to be driving around, Escape from LA style, where if your car starts and it drives, or, maybe a little bit of Road Warrior, like the first Road Warrior. Oh, that was a good movie. You just drive your souped up, turbocharged whatever and drive across the wasteland with your dog. I mean, those are classic things that I enjoy talking about. So the anti-vaccine activists, they marched in D.C., a city that mandates coronavirus vaccination. They did that to protest mandates. Yes, they did. And so thousands of protesters from across the country, including some of the biggest names in the anti-vaccination movement, John F. Kennedy Jr., I believe, was one of them, descended on the nation's capital Sunday for a rally against vaccine mandates almost 2 years into a coronavirus pandemic that has killed more than 860,000 Americans. The gathering on the National Mall was a jarring spectacle. The crowd of demonstrators, many unmasked. Oh, my word. Were they unmasked? Decrying vaccine mandates in the middle of a city that has adopted mask and vaccine mandates to reduce sickness and death from the surge of okay. It's battered DC for weeks. Really? Okay. Okay. Right. So you had a lot of people hoisting some pretty, some signs that are like, boy, I believe that sign. I do believe that. And okay. Yeah. It kind of felt like there wasn't a ton of coverage on this. And, maybe we're just like, all right, yeah, you're doing yet another march. Is that really going to do anything? Because we're literally just kind of following the vaccine mandates and, they're in court, they're out of court, they're being shot down. The major impact has already happened from them, which is, 93% of the population, in that work industry has gotten them. Some of the like police departments and fire departments here in Seattle, you look at the numbers that have been vaxxed and you're like, that's pretty much 100%. I would call that good, not worry about firing the rest. But, they've got these folks running the show here in a city like Seattle where they're just like, no, you got to be vaxxed because they go on to the logic and you're like, does that logic even apply in January of 2022? With what we're seeing from, the current variant of the coronavirus? That's where that breakdown to me, it kind of feels like, all right, you're a day late and dollar short with that. However, we're still doing it and we've still got to talk about it. And the interesting thing that I thought about with this protest was that it was actually peaceful. And you know what? They actually pulled a permit for this, where so many of those other demonstrations that were, termed peaceful to the tune of $2 billion worth of damage across the United States. I mean, as peaceful as that is, but this crowd here, the anti-vaxxers, they pulled a permit and they did it the right way. And there wasn't any violence. You don't see anything about, tearing things down, tearing statues down and running into stores and bashing windows and graffitiing things up. There wasn't one mention of graffiti. It's interesting, isn't it? So you can have peaceful protesting. It just seems like it happens from one side and not necessarily the other. There were peaceful protests during that whole George Floyd thing, but so often they got co-opted by another entity and things just went wildly downhill, right? So I think some of the originators of the protests back in the day of 2020, they were on a more peaceful march, but inevitably those things just went wildly sideways. But the media thought that they were mostly peaceful, whereas this one, it was. I mean, I didn't find a single story about somebody getting worked up and bashing in a store window, because nothing says progress like bashing in a store window and then jumping into that store and stealing their stuff. I mean, that didn't happen. So yeah, good on the anti-vaxxers that actually had a peaceful protest. Okay. So that's really about it for this one. So we've got these mandates kind of still going in the court system. They're good, they're bad. They've been shot down. Federal judge doing this, federal judge. You almost got to keep up to that. Keep up on a daily basis if that's your thing. But I'm kind of more watching that more in the rearview mirror now. You know what I mean? Not paying as much attention to it as I once was, because I think the damage has been done from the majority of this. And people are either vaxxed or they're not. And if they're not vaxxed by this point in time, odds are they're probably not going to be. So it is what it is at this point. And if you feel like you don't want to make a medical decision, have to do something medically to your body in order to keep up your employment, I don't disagree with you. How about that? How about that for just wishy-washy? No, I think people have a right to say, hey, yeah, I draw the line right there. And these federal mandates, we'll just have to kind of see how this goes. I'm not going to devote a ton of time to it moving forward because I think the majority of this stuff has already kind of sorted itself out. And I know there's a lot of people who are like, yeah, don't tread on me. And they go through all of those kinds of things. And it's a much, much greater issue for them. And I agree. But as far as the news stories, still coming out, feels like we're winding down this kind of storyline. But as stuff pops up, I'll report it to you right here in the Seattle Real Estate Podcast. Okay, that's it for me. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much for supporting. Love to have you subscribe. Hit that like button. Share with your friends and family. That's a great way of getting the stuff out that YouTube looks at and goes, okay, yeah, Seattle Real Estate Podcast. They've got something going on. Thanks again for supporting. We'll catch up soon. Bye for now.